You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome to round two here at week 2 of the season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn, as always, joined by my wonderful co-host Bairdrus.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We're going to have a super exciting matchup for you all here in just a few moments. We're going to have Creeping Death on Big Combry versus RazorClaw on Icaria Gold.
Yep, and this should be a pretty cool matchup. The Big Combray deck and the Icaria Gold deck, generally the same thing, largely the same themes going on in their deck, although the Fire Time Justice deck trying to splash additional color for cards they think can help them out in general. Things like Jack the Bounty Hunter, which I think is criminally underplayed. Torch, obviously, probably the best card in the game. So they are paying costs in their mana base, but in matchups like this, where the fact they may stumble a little bit, getting their mana may not matter, they just kind of have better cards.
Yeah, interesting to know. RazorClaw's got what I would consider a little bit more of an interesting build here of Icaria Gold. He streamlined the deck a little bit, and he's not playing what we've termed here at the Eternal Tournament Series the toolbox variant as much. And the fact that he's got a lot of 2-ofs of most of his cards, or 3-ofs instead of 1-of. So the Rise to the Challenges are often going to be finding not singleton targets, but cards he will possibly have in his hand. I mean, it's still going to be the idea that he's using Rise to find the specific answer to the situation he's presented, but it's not like he's only playing one of each card, so there is some ability for him to naturally draw into them as well.
Yeah, it's just the Rise to Challenge largely for consistency. It's not really a toolbox, as you said, although there are still important cards like Icaria, Mystic Ascendant, Martial Ironthorn, Jack that you do want to find as often as possible, and the Rise to Challenge certainly does help them do that.
Yeah, and on Creeping Death side, he's on Big Combry. Not too much to say here. I'm not seeing any crazy inclusions or cards being left out here. It looks like he's on what we would consider to be a pretty standard Big Combry list. So we'll see how this game turns out as we move into turn 1.
And we do see Creeping Death with a very reactionary hand to start with 2 Harsh Rules, Combray Healer. May not even play out that Sandstorm Titan on turn 4, given the fact that they have 2 Harsh Rules. You generally don't want to extend out your own creatures into a potential Harsh Rule, just like making it worse. Although Creeping Death might feel forced to do that, depending on what happens.
Yeah, and on RazorClaw's side, we see him just using a Temple Scribe, picking up a Sandstorm Titan off the draw here, and his power base is seeming to work out pretty well for him here, so he's going to feel comfortable to extend this Seraph, likely able to get the Sandstorm Titan down next turn. See if Creeping Death wants to match it with a Sandstorm Titan of his own.
I imagine that we're just going to see the trigger pulled in the Harsh Rule here. It's likely not getting better than this for Creeping Death. He has 2 of them. It's going to be hard to leverage both. It's greedy to expect to get more than this. But I guess we'll see if Creeping Death wants to try and extract more value. But it seems greedy to me to expect that the Harsh will get more value than this.
Yeah, it is a little greedy here, interestingly enough. But I feel like Creeping Death feels like he can reasonably take a little bit of damage here, or maybe sack the Combray Healer. I guess he was willing to wait the 1 turn since he was just going to go ahead and lose the Combray Healer either way. So unfortunately, doesn't see any extra commitment out of RazorClaw, but that was a pretty good Harsh Rule for him, all things considered. Got a Seraph and a Sandstorm Titan out of the way, and Creeping Death at least has some stuff to reload with himself, so...
Yeah, essentially, all that does is let both players hit land drops, advance like 1 more turn into the game, which would generally favor Creeping Death, but Dragonclaw does have access to things like Icaria, which we do see in their hand, although he will need to deal with the Sandstorm Titan before that card can be effective.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him as well, he is missing another Justice influence, so Icaria currently going to be unplayable. Likely going to see Jack the Bounty Hunter come down here. Choosing his silence off the Seraph makes a lot of sense here. Doesn't want the effect to go wild. He knows he can take care of the Sandstorm Titan on the following turn, which is exactly what he does. Uses that Vanquish, and now he's going to be able to start pushing in some damage here. Creeping likely with that Seraph going to come down. Yeah, going to use this as an opportunity to drop his next harsh roll onto the board.
Yeah, that certainly seems as good a window as any. Although, unfortunately for Creeping Death, he doesn't have much to follow up here. He just has the two reactive creatures in the Valkyrie and the Desert Marshal. So he does need to draw some of the top end. And Creeping Death is not playing Vodkin, as I thought would have become customary at this point, but people are still resisting the shift. So his top end cards that he has available to draw are less numerous than they could be.
Yeah, certainly. He's going to have some number of Mystic Ascendants. And with RazorClaw finding a Justice influence now, Ikaria comes down. And, I mean, Creeping Death will be able to at least bring her to the ground and silence her. But the damage is kind of already done. And unfortunately for Creeping Death as well, he's either going to have to fire off the Harsh Rule here. Or if he uses Valkyrie Enforcer, he's going to have to double block.
Yeah, neither option's particularly appealing. I do think that silencing with the Valkyrie is better because the harsh rule is the more valuable card. Although when we're both top decking, that may not be the case. Maybe the Valkyrie is better, especially when you're going to double block against a deck with Torch. Bad things can happen. Although we do see that RazorClaw not trying to invite the blowout, just going to be like, I'm going to attack. Try and just get the damage through. We do see the chump block happen, and now we will probably see the harsh roll in the 5/5.
Yeah, and we do see that come down. You know, very interesting out of RazorClaw there, electing to hold his Combri Healer, definitely respecting the removal as well as the harsh rule out of Creeping Death. Doesn't get himself too overextended here, and actually elects to just fire off the base Combri Healer he had as well. A little bit of an interesting decision there, but possibly just trying to play around Vanquish.
You generally want like the bigger one to play, obviously, because it can attack first. And now we see Creeping Death, or not, sorry, RazorClaw getting a little bit punished for that because they would have had a reasonable attack into the board this turn, whereas now they get to play 7/10 this turn. It can't block because it's facing flyers, and now the Mystic Ascendant's in play, making the blocks weird. So
yeah, although I have to imagine if you're sitting in a RazorClaw's position, you'd be pretty happy to trade off of this 7/10 Combri Healer for the Mystic Ascendant. So we will likely see an attack out of him here after he's done finding the way. We're going to see Creeping Death using this silence here.
Which does nothing, I believe.
I guess
chump blocks.
Okay, yeah, so he's just using it for the chump block. Okay, that's fair then. Yeah, and this will allow him to push a ton of damage through on this turn.
Yeah,
so.
This crapback is non-trivial. This is a bunch of damage. Creeping Death, even though the 7/10 is going to get to come in every turn, is pretty far behind in the race.
Yeah, he has lowered the clock now down to 2 turns. See if RazorClaw can find some sort of an answer here. He has a Mystic Ascendant of his own and plenty of power to chug through with it, so that is pretty good for him. Creeping Death picking up the Marshall Ironthorn, though. I mean, at the end of the day, we are seeing a 2-turn clock represented and now a 1-turn clock. So Creep definitely in the driver's seat here. RazorClaw going to need something big. And he will have 2 draws on his next turn to find it.
Yep. We see the Mystic Ascendant starts turn through, but apparently he is going to call it quits here. Didn't like what he saw. Ended up drawing more power. Birds are going to come in and finish it off. So we will move into game 2 and see what both players bring to bear via their sideboard.
Yeah, let's take a look at the sideboards here, see what players are going to be bringing in. RazorClaw going to be the one needing to pick up 2 wins here. Taking a look at his sideboard, we see some Protects, some Awakened Students, some Scorpion Wasps, a Reality Warden, a Starseal Die Show, a couple cards here and there, Healer's Cloak, Furnace Mage. Likely that we're going to see the Protects come in. I also would not be surprised to see Awakened Students, possibly.
Yeah, this is a sideboard plan we've seen employed by various decks, and you see both players actually employing it. Having the ability to augment the speed of their deck, having like low curve threats in their sideboard or higher curve threats for the like more aggressive decks, being able to change between the beatdown and the person who is trying to react is a very valuable tool to have post sideboard. Being able to augment the speed of your deck, given the matchup, especially when there's so many mid range decks. So Creeping Death could bring in the Awakened Students, same for RazorClaw, but it wouldn't shock me if they didn't. They don't have to become more aggressive. It's based upon what they feel their role is in the matchup or what role they're better suited to fill and how they want to approach that.
Yeah, absolutely. We will see how that will work out for him as he moves in there. On the other side of the table, we have Creep and Death going to have 3 copies of Protect, 2 Awakened Students, 3 Decays, 2 Scorpion Wasps, a Stand Together, 2 Healer's Cloaks, and 2 Reality Wardens. So Creep and Death, your sideboard plan is pretty minimal in this matchup, honestly. There's really not a lot he needs to bring in here over his base version of the deck.
I do like the Stand Together. That's a very important card in this matchup. Harsh Rule is a pivotal card. Stand Together counters it, sets up pretty savage blowouts. So I do like that. But yes, outside of that, there's not really a lot you're super inclined to bring in. Protect is relevant. There are particular cards that do matter much more, Bisque Ascendant and stuff. So we will see how that all pans out as we are now moving here into game 2. Both players just hitting land drops in the early turns of the game.
Yeah, going to be a little bit of a slow one here out of the start. And RazorClaw finding a Harsh Rule of his own early. That's actually pretty relevant looking at Creep's hand. Creep's going to be what looks like a little bit more of the aggressor in this matchup. Something interesting to note that we didn't really touch on, RazorClaw playing that Ikaria Gold deck actually I don't think has a single weapon in his list anywhere. Yeah, I can't find one.
It does not appear to be so, and that's a trend we've seen. Like even I think Toth is only on like 1 War Runehammer as a bullet card, but if you're not playing things that give you armor, like kind of artisans and stuff, the weapons do become a lot less appealing because in their base forms they are usually underwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. See a Desert Marshal coming out here to take advantage of Creep's Valkyrie Enforcer a little bit, bring it down to the ground and letting his Seraph trade off profitably. Though Creep likely going to just build here towards this Harsh Rule. Unfortunately for him, RazorClaw not likely going to be doing much on his next turn. Does commit another unit to the board, though, and that actually does make the Harsh Rule as a 3-for-1, I think you're definitely willing to pull the trigger on that, even if a lot of these cards aren't the highest value.
Yeah, it is kind of just a bunch of nonsense, but it is 7 power on board. He does we'll like the answer. Harshall's likely not getting better than that, so we'll pull the trigger there. But RazorClaw is not like particularly unhappy about that himself. He can now spend this turn rising the challenge. If he falls behind on board, he has the Harsh Rule to kit up. We do see that he elects to play a Temple Scribe instead. Kind of fills the same purpose of Rise the Challenge, just setting up your hand for future turns, but a little bit less mana efficient.
Yeah, he's really looking for power right now. Missing 2 power drops in a row here is certainly hurting him. Creep, on the other hand, in no short supply of power, and now he's going to be able to have these Mystic Ascendants going off. Fortunately, RazorClaw was able to pick up a Sandstorm Titan, so that will at least provide another body on the board he can deal with. But we do see a Sandstorm Titan of Creep's own coming down, and this puts him in quite an awkward situation. Definitely because RazorClaw missed another power drop here, so he's going to have to spend his whole turn using a Rise to the Challenge. Meanwhile, Creep has plenty of options in his hand he can keep going along with. And RazorClaw really just getting stuck on his power base at the moment.
And this is certainly a spot where you would like to rise for something like Amber Acolyte, although that is not included in RazorClaw's deck. But there are spots you get into like that where you are very choked on mana, or power rather, and you do have access to Rise the Challenge, and it can't really help you make forward progress towards that goal.
Yeah, and here we see Creep getting down the Marshall Ironthorn. He's just going to absolutely go off as soon as he hits a power. Like, even with the Marshall getting silenced, sure, now it's just a 5/5 body. And yeah, we see Creep picking up a Vanquish, and this is going to allow him to push in and pressure RazorClaw really heavily with both these 5/5s. RazorClaw definitely going to be firing off a Harsh Rule next turn now that he's found a 5th power. But Creeping Death in no short supply of threats he can reestablish after.
Yeah, being able to force RazorClaw into a harsh rule before committing another Mystic Ascent is pretty great for Creeping Death. If he didn't draw that Vanquish, he likely would have just played Mystic Ascent that turn, and like the harsh rule gets a bit more value. So good for Creeping Death to still have all of these Mystic Ascents, and he's awkwardly on 8 power, and we do see that he does elect to fire off just a 4/4, forsaking some value just to retake some initiative, which I do agree with.
Yeah, certainly. Going to get the Owl down there and just provide it as a body that he can hopefully start pushing in some damage with. Unfortunately for him, RazorClaw does have a Sandstorm Titan that he's likely just going to ground this Owl with. There is also a Jek in hand, so we will actually, see him use Jek here to go ahead and silence that. He'll probably be wishing he had that silence here in just a moment.
Yeah, and this is not the last Mystic Ascendant. There are many friends coming along, so like I imagine that like Creeping Death's inevitability is pretty absurd at this point. There's so much that RazorClaw has to slog through. Like it's just going to be a really hard time, and we do see the harsh rules pulled to kill this first Mystic Ascendant, but that's just step one of many.
Yeah, I mean he's just gonna have Mystic Ascendant after Mystic Ascendant here. Like Creeping Death really is just completely in the driver's seat here. Like he's just got a ton of answers. And RazorClaw does have some good threats of his own. He does have a Sandstorm Titan. He does have a Seraph, but none of those is immediately super threatening. Although we do see a Karya coming down. Yeah, having a Karya down now that he's finally hit his power, that actually does provide a decent threat here. Although with the Vanquish pickup, unfortunately, not going to look nearly as good now. So he's going to be relying on some of his other threats to carry him here. Since Creeping Death has established a very quick clock with this giant Mystic Ascendant.
Yeah, and even if this first one gets beat, then there's like another Mystic Ascendant, and then there's Parliament. Although we do see, after already having seen 2 harsh rules, Creeping Death feel comfortable enough to extend the Great Parliament into the board, try and get this over with as quickly as possible. Sandstorm Titan has some stuff to say about that, but Creeping Death's still in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, certainly in a good spot. Finding that Seraph is going to make a huge difference here. He's able to just swing in with the Mystic Ascendant. Wow, he actually is just going to jam the whole board. This isn't necessarily bad. This is curious that he feels... I guess he feels the need to throw the harsh rule here since the rest of his hand is so solid. Not necessarily a bad idea. Although now that the Seraph is gone, you really don't have to. Now you just chuck down your own Seraph and pop it up.
This attack was actually pretty good just on its face, because either they eat a 4/4 and take a bunch of damage, in which case, cool, you don't care, or they do what happened and trade their board, and you still have 2 4/4s and a 2/2, and you get to extend a Seraph. So that attack was pretty much good either way. Good for Creeping Death to recognize that, keep aggression going.
Yeah, and Creeping Death now is just going to be spending his turns activating Seraph. Ooh, and even finds a Marison's Disciple. And yeah, with the Marison's Disciple picking up the Sandcrawler, and he's just going to push in a little bit of damage here. I mean, Razor is absolutely on Harsh Rule or Bust here. We've already seen 2 copies come out, so I have a feeling this is just a game. Yeah, and unfortunately for RazorClaw, not going to be able to do it. Creeping Death taking the series down 2-2-0 with Big Combry.
Yep, just the inevitability of Big Combray being too much in that game. RazorClaw does certainly have some top end himself. He has 3 Mystic Ascendant, 3 Harsh Rolls to find them. 3 Rise to Challenge, rather, sorry. But unable to really match just the raw power of what Creeping Death's draw brought to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. Just could not overcome it there in the matchup. Unfortunately for him, but unfortunate for RazorClaw, that is. Definitely not unfortunate for Creep, him taking down the series in what looked like pretty convincing fashion. I mean, game 1 was a little bit closer than game 2, but game 2 was kind of just a runaway landslide. Started with RazorClaw having some power issues. If RazorClaw had hit his power on time, I think we would have seen a very different game there, but unfortunately there were just too many turns in the mid-game where he was just stalling out because of his power base not coming together, not actually having any power to play. So a little bit unfortunate there, but unfortunately it is what it is. That is Eternal.
Yep. And we do have a backup match for all of you. We do have Komodo on Shimmer Pack versus Hulkbuster on Horu Control. We do see the game progressed pretty far to this point. Komodo is currently leading 1-0. So facing down a Thunderstrike Dragon with a horde of pretty anemic creatures.
Yeah, absolutely. Komodo desperately needs to find an obelisk here. That's all he needs. He's got the 8 power online already. If he drops an obelisk, he's easily going to go ahead and take over this game. I mean, he can still keep forcing through a little bit of damage each turn, so I guess this isn't completely irrelevant. Like, if he drops the Crystallize here, he can push for 5, which is some amount of damage, but really he is just hoping to draw into that obelisk. If he does push the 5 here, though, and his opponent tries to drop some sort of a reload ability, he can backlash it and present a lethal attack on the following turn. So I definitely think Crystallize is looking like a solid play here.
Yeah, and it also sets it up so if Hulkbuster has a spell, the backlash makes it a 2-turn clock. But we do see that Komodo is going to be content to pass the turn here, take 10 in the air, and then crystallize the next turn potentially. He does have, I think, 2 Voltapraxis in play, I believe is the second attachment. This first one certainly is Voltapraxis, but the Lightning Storm is going to have to get the backlash. We'll see if there's a second sweeper to follow up or a backlash to counter the backlash, which there is. So all of Komodo's creatures will be going away except for the lowly Stormlinks.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Komodo, I really felt like you just needed to pressure there with an attack. Doesn't find a lot to reload with either. Now he's just going to have to defensively crystallize to not die. Although if Hulkbuster has another negate, yeah, that's just going to be this game. So we will be seeing a game 3 out of these 2 players. Unfortunately, Komodo not able to close that one out there. I definitely think he had a better chance if he had burned the crystallize earlier. Still would have gotten negated, but it at least would have, kind of laid out what he was up against instead of him just kind of banking it. So,
yeah, I don't hate the crystallize there because, as we said, it is a 2-turn clock if your opponent casts a spell, which they're very likely to do to try and interact with you. So it probably was the best chance to win. Just unfortunately, not finding any of the pump spells for the creatures, no Xenobelisk, no Shimmer Pack. So that is something that happens with the Shimmer Pack deck. You just sometimes find yourself with a horde of random 1/1s and not a lot to do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to take a look at Komodo's deck list really quick because it's very interesting to see. And yeah, he actually does have just 2 copies, but both were in play there of Vault of the Praxis in his list. Also, a notable inclusion, he's playing 2 Wump party starters to go along with his scouting parties.
Yeah, Wump is a powerful card allowing you to trigger the infiltrate on the Yeti Scouts that are made from Scouting Party. So you get to play Wump on an early turn, and then as soon as you play Scouting Party, it triggers all of the card draw. Wump is kind of anemic by himself. The only card he synergizes with is Scouting Party, but it is such a powerful synergy. It is something we've started to see pretty regularly.
So, were there some frog tokens down there on that last game, Truedawn?
Yes, there were. Those due to a raid of frogs, I believe, in Hulkbuster's deck, as we do see 3 in the sideboard, which I assume were brought in. I imagine it hit. Maybe it did hit Xenobelisk, we didn't see earlier in the game, but that would be one of the premier cards you're looking to hit at least. Same with Shimmer Pack.
Yeah, and that was the exact same thought I had when I saw those Rain of Frogs. I did realize that those were frog tokens down there, and it's actually quite likely that Hulkbuster did in fact use Rain of Frogs there to go ahead and take care of Xen and Obelisk. Would have likely been why Komodo was in such a desperate situation. Definitely a very good sideboard card in this matchup specifically. We'll see if he'll be able to utilize it a second time around to better advantage.
Yeah, and Komodo has a pretty reasonable draw here. He gets to keep hitting power drops, get the Amber Acolyte, has a Vault of Praxis, Praxis Displacer to rebuy either of his creatures that get more power. So even in this matchup where there aren't really a lot of creatures on the opposing side to bounce, Praxis Displacer is still able to get value in this deck just generally.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do see Komodo putting down a couple units here. If he can find a Xenon Obelisk, this is going to be huge. We'll see if Hulkbuster does take this turn to use Rain of Frogs. Yeah, and he in fact does, although I'm curious to see if Komodo is just going to backlash that. I feel like you definitely want to backlash this, since based on your current hand, it's very likely he's just going to take backlash anyway and leave you with 2 dead cards. So Do see that going down, and Xenon Obelisk the pickup. Now, this is where things start to get out of control for Komodo.
And it looks like he's not playing the Obelisk this turn, which strikes me as very odd. You know your opponent has Rain of Frogs, and even though they already played one, I think you just want to get the Obelisk in play. I think that what this telegraphs inside of Komodo is he's concerned about ruins that we do see that Hulkbuster has in the sideboard. There is a red splash solely for ruin, so he wants to be able to hold a backlash after he plays Xenon Obelisk and protect it from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this does make some degree of sense here, although this is the downside, is that Lightning Storm can come out and punish you. So now that backlash is forced off here, and Xenon Obelisk likely just going to get dropped this turn regardless. It will allow him to push a ton of damage this turn, though, definitely with the Storm Links now in play. And already Hulkbuster down to 5. So even if he does have the ruin here, he's still going to need something else to follow up with. Hopefully he has a harsh rule here, and in fact he does. Able to take care of the board. That's going to be very important for him here, as Komodo was starting to press quite threateningly down his life total.
And now we see the sad Praxis Displacer coming in, doesn't have anything to do. All of the little value creatures that may have been willing to go back to hand are now gone. The 4/3 does attack into the Throne Warden, but Vanquish will ensure that does not happen. And now this Storm Links as a potential 3/4 doesn't really have a lot to do.
Yeah, if Komodo can find one more power, the Storm Links will be a 4/5, and it can contest this Throne Warden coming down. But for the moment, Hulkbuster seems to have stabilized relatively well. And yeah, we do see Komodo getting his 8th power there. Kind of a double-edged sword. Not really sure you wanted to draw another power there, but at least it does allow you to attack in with the Storm Links.
It is essentially drawing a business card because it turns your card that couldn't do anything previously into a card that can now do something. It will eat a Channel of the Tempest, which is a pretty good draw from Hulkbuster there. He now has presumably a bunch of business, although as someone who has played a fair amount of Channel of the Tempest, I routinely draw a whole bunch of nothing with it. So we will see if Hulkbuster was a bit luckier.
Yeah, we'll see indeed. If Hulkbuster can establish one threat down right now, and a second sight will definitely help get him there. But if he can get one threat down here, he's likely going to lock Komodo down for a while. Komodo's going to need a big draw here. A Sandstorm Titan or a Marison's Disciple are going to be the two cards he's really fishing for here. Go ahead and give him the edge and hopefully let him close this game out. In the meantime, though, Hulkbuster using a pair of second sights, going to have a lot of his cards he was able to look at there.
Yeah, and did we see if anything got echoed? Are there possibly a horde of Thunderstrike Dragons coming? There certainly wasn't that turn off the top, so it looks like it was just a normal cantrip.
Yeah, based off how many cards he had, I'm going to think not. And I'm curious to see if Komodo is actually going to go ahead and drop the Praxis Displacer down here. It's a little bit worrying to overcommit here, since it's likely Hulkbuster has another. I mean, if Hulkbuster has 5 cards in hand and he just passes his turn with full power, what does that say about the consistency of his hand?
It could just be a bunch of reactive cards. The deck does not have a lot of threats it's willing to play out. There's Throne Wardens, Valkyrie Enforcer, Orc Greenhammer, but a Thunderstrike Dragon. But outside of that, it's largely reactive deck, so it's possible that the Channel of the Tempest just found more reactivity. And we do see that it found another Channel of the Tempest, which will maybe find some things to potentially win the game now.
Yeah, certainly. I definitely think that was a very interesting play there out of Komodo to keep the Talir's favorite in hand. Played poorly around single target removal, but played better around the harsh rule. So definitely trying to respect the harsh rule there. And we see Hulkbuster just actually starting to drop a ton of damage now. 10 damage Channel of Tempest, and that's 3 of his Channel of Tempest. And it looks like he's going to be in no short supply of answers in his hand. Now holding 10 cards here. And Komodo able to draw some cards, finds a Sandstorm Titan. That's pretty good, but we'll see what Hulkbuster's answers are going to be to this board. All he needs is a harsh rule and a Vanquish here, and he's still in the driver's seat.
I don't love Komodo not playing Sandstorm Titan. I get that you're concerned about harsh rule, but the only way you win this game is that if Hulkbuster just drew a bunch of air. If they have you're never beating harsh rule. You can't play around it. If they're able to remove this pressure, they're just going to kill you. So I do think you just kind of shovel in there, and if they have it, they have it. If they don't, you win. It's unlikely, but when you find yourselves in a spot like this where you're on like 5% anyway, you have to take pretty aggressive lines to give yourself the best shot.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree here. I think the Sandstorm Titan needed to come down. The harsh rule was there, but like I said, all it takes is harsh from a follow-up answer on the Sandstorm Titan, like another Vanquish, and Komodo's looking pretty sunk here. Didn't honestly want to see Xenon Obelisk here. Like, getting the Sandstorm Titan bigger here is pretty irrelevant. It will make the Sandstorm Titan a one-swing lethal, but I have a feeling the Sandstorm Titan's not going to be surviving anyway. Komodo really wants to pick up another unit on his draw steps most of the time. That way he can cycle some extra cards off Vault of the Praxis.
And we just see just not anything there from Komodo, and that does leave him up open to something like this, potentially, where Channel of the Tempest come down and attack comes in for 4, and if there is a Torch present... Oh, no, Torch is not in the stack. Never mind, I apologize. The red mana threw me off. But he will be going down to 1.
Yeah, Hulkbuster has played out his 4 Channel of the Tempest, but he now has officially put Komodo in a position where Komodo has to commit to the board here. Every single turn now he's going to be forced to play a unit that can block here. And we see our Ruin coming down, wondering what it took care of. Xenon Obelisk, not the card I would have imagined he would have chosen, actually. Kind of surprised Hulkbuster did not take Vault of the Praxis there.
Yeah, Vault of the Praxis is certainly one of the ways Komodo could draw out of this. With the second Xenon Obelisk already in play, the creatures are already going to be large enough where you have to deal with them. Removing the second one matters, but the way they draw out of that game is by chaining Vault of Praxis together. But it looks like that will not happen anyway, and we will see Hulkbuster take the series 2-1.
Yeah, big congratulations to Hulkbuster taking down that series there. Had to do a little bit of navigation there, but is able to weather the storm, casting 4 Channel to Tempest in 1 game. I wonder if we have an award for that to hand out, because that might be the first time I think I've ever seen that happen.
The Time Justice Primal deck routinely casts 4, usually more than 4, because you're excavating them. But yeah, it's something that doesn't happen a whole bunch outside of that deck. It's certainly a cool thing to see. But we will take this opportunity to talk about the Eternal Tournament Series, the tournament you are currently watching. This is an open tournament that we do every Saturday, so if you're interested in joining it, you can do so. It is open to everyone who may have an interest in doing so. Doing well in these open tournaments does potentially qualify you for our 2-day invitationals every 2 months with cash prizes. And those invitationals do qualify you for our mid-year and annual championships with even bigger prize pools. There are also the invitationals. The entry fee to the tournament is free. You can just get in for signing up.
Yeah, all you have to do really is first or second at an open, or accrue enough invitational points to get invited to an invitational. We invite the top 32 players, and they play it out over a 2-day event, normally a double elimination style tournament, where we offer up cash prizes as well as series points. Series points are contributed from your top finishes in weeklies as well as your top finishes in invitationals, which qualify you for our mid-year major, which we actually had last month, and the annual championships, which will be coming up in a few months here. Got about 4 or 5 months till that's coming down. And those are our largest tournaments, where we invite a very few number of players, 16 in fact, drawn from the winners of the invitationals as well as all of the highest series point earners, and one last chance qualifier to come compete for our largest cash prizes to determine who is the best Eternal Tournament Series player. Always super fun and exciting tournaments. So if you guys want to participate, feel free to join into these opens here. Like we said, they are free to everyone. All of our tournaments are free. None of them require an entry fee. So if you want to take a crack at it, every Saturday starting at noon, we start running a tournament. So get your deck lists in time. You can find all that out on RNGeternal.com for our full calendar. You can also check the Eternal Discord in the tournament chat and tournament info for anything you need to know about deck registration and signups.
And that will do it here for round 2. We will be back shortly with round 3 coverage. So everyone stick around, and we will be back with more action in just a minute.